McKinsey and Company representative. Ispričavam se, zapravo uopće ne znam više šta govorim. Koji je. Imamo gospodina Finn Borluma Kristensena iz UNED HTA-a. Molio bi gospođu Tatjanu Rejić da dođe da nam se pridruži iz Europske udruge pacijenata s bolestima jetre. I očekujemo ministra zdravstva gospodina Rajka Ostojića, kojeg ne vidim još uvijek, ali mislim da imamo zamjenu. Evo, izvoli. You know the rules.
So I know the rules, and I have the luck to be the first one of the afternoon. So hopefully you'll still be awake, and I'll try to keep the audience awake for the people that will follow me, distinguished panelists that will follow me. Thanks a lot for the invitation. I'm Pietro Ferrara. I'm an associate principal from McKinsey and Company. And with my speech, I'll try to make a link between the last topic of the morning, which is indeed sustainability of healthcare systems, and actually what will follow me, my session and this session, my speech and this session, which is topics like health technology assessment, innovation in delivery. And I'll try to make it in a quite interesting way, looking very much into the future, the future in 2040. So let me start on a positive note. Undoubtedly, healthcare has been a success story in the last 100 years. Now, people can doubt about the fact that the improvement of life expectancy is only due to healthcare. I mean, it's for sure due to nutrition. It's for sure due to, the fact that there are less wars and there's better hygiene. But for sure, healthcare has done a great deal, a great contribution to this. Let's just think about primary healthcare and the contribution it has made in terms of reducing infant mortalities, not to speak about saving people with a stroke or with an heart attack. So healthcare has been definitely one of the success stories of the past century. But how long can this continue? Because, of course, as was pointed out, and it's obviously evident to all of you, this is becoming, unfortunately, a burden that many states are not able to sustain anymore as of today due to the financial constraints. Now, if we look a little bit further, so if we look at year 2040, and if the trend continues as of today in terms of both GDP growth and in terms of healthcare expenditure growth, what will be the weight of healthcare over GDP? So today in the United States, it's around 15–16%. In 2040, it could be anywhere between 23 and 26–28%. And aside from the US, which are on all charts an outlier, let's take other OECD countries, European countries, and perhaps also Croatia. This number could be anywhere between 12–13% and 18–20%. So is this sustainable? Maybe. There's a lot of debate about the fact that it's bad that 20% of the GDP is spent on healthcare. Maybe it's a good thing. Maybe it's a priority for countries, but certainly it's something to think about because we are speaking about doubling the weight over GDP in the next years. So, and what are the drivers of this growth, and will they actually slow down in the coming years? Well, some of these were anticipated before during the OECD colleague intervention, but definitely there are drivers that are both on demand and supply, and this framework is actually a result of a work that McKinsey did with the World Economic Forum last year, interviewing experts from around the world. And if we look at the demand side, for sure there's a matter of increasing patient expectations. Well, there is a fact that is healthcare is something difficult to really value, to perceive the value of, and value for price. So people just tend to want more for the same money spent. And also in Maslow hierarchy, I'm sure most of you are familiar with, but when people don't have problems with starvation anymore and and are having a nice lifestyle, then healthcare becomes actually an important value, so they keep demanding more. So expectations are unlikely to decrease or to slow down their growth. Then there is a matter, of course, was amply anticipated, of aging population, which mixed with the unhealthy lifestyle, so which drive obesity and other chronic diseases. It's more than a ticking bomb. It's actually already today something that is putting under pressure the healthcare system. In the future can be deadly. And actually, I mean, I know the statistics very well of my country, but in 2040, more or less a third of the Italian population will be over the age of 65. So the presence of chronic disease in a person over the age of 65 is, I think it's 60 to 70%. So the cost of the for the healthcare system will be simply skyrocketing. So from a demand side, there are not huge hopes. Or at least we need to act heavily, for example, on things like lifestyle to reduce the growth of healthcare expenditure. And if you look at the supply side, so supply drivers of health expenditure growth, the picture is, I would say gives more hope, but still there are a series of drivers that need to be considered. For example, are the incentives the right one to drive healthcare cost containment? If you take the United States, where they actually pay for volume, so for number of cases or diagnostic treatments done, of course this skyrockets the volume, right? The volume of diagnostic done. So the incentives must be corrected and must be moved towards more bundled payments. And this is something many countries are doing. There are vested interests that are relenting the change. So doctors, for example, have a natural tendency to keep their, let's say, their role in the healthcare system and their image of sort of a little bit wizards, right? But not only doctors, there are also other vested interests and positions in pharma companies, medical devices, government that don't want to give up power. I mean, there's a lot of resistance in the overall healthcare sector, which is natural for every sector that needs to undergo a reform. And then, of course, there are issues related to the rising cost of care. First of all, not always, and that's actually why health technology assessment is so important, innovation is really driven by a cost-effective thinking. So it's often driven by improving outcome, but does it really lower the overall cost of treatment? And finally, of course, therapies, augmenting the number of therapies and treatment, amples hugely then the options for treatment, and therefore people live longer. So people with a stroke today live, and of course they become a cost for the healthcare sector. Is this good? Yes, but it has an implication. So what can countries do in this scenario? So they have, we would say, three options. Either they do less, so they simply reduce that coverage, for example, or they increase waiting times. That's something that, for example, unofficially Italy is doing, because longer waiting times for certain type of treatments are a sign of the fact that the state cannot afford to treat as many patients as before. Or they can do more. So they can accept to say, okay, I'm going to pay 20% of my GDP on healthcare, and perhaps to do this I need to raise taxation, something that, again, Italy is doing very nicely recently. So these are the two options, but can we do something? Can we find a third option? We believe so, and the option is actually to radically transform the healthcare sector. So McKinsey and the World Economic Forum have been collaborating in this direction, and we have been studying last year the challenges of the healthcare sector, and this year we have been collaborating with a number of experts, more than 100 experts around the world, and with 6 countries around the world, to do two things. First of all, understand what could healthcare system in 2040 could look like. And second thing, understand how countries could get prepared to that. Now, why are we looking at 2040? Because we believe that the transformation we are suggesting is not something that can be done in the next 2 to 3 years, not even perhaps in the next 5 years. And that's why it becomes challenging for one single Minister of Health to manage this. You need to have, it needs to become a country effort that aligns several stakeholders towards a longer-term plan. So now, first of all, we started asking ourselves indeed, how can the world look like in 2040? Now, we don't have the crystal ball, and therefore we asked a lot of people their opinion, and this is a little bit the result of a polling of more or less 150 interviews from experts around the world, from different sectors, different instruction, from doctors to innovators, IT people, etc. So the work can be significantly different in 2040, and these are actually some of the variables that could influence how the world will look like. So let's think about, I'll go into breakthrough technologies and solidarity in a second, but let's think about social norms. Will healthcare be a value? So will people value really healthcare and well-being in 2040? Or will value the fact that they can be overweight and they can eat anything they want, and will be regardless to the impact they have it has on healthcare? And will there be social pressure for them to get slimmer? What about the national state autonomy? So will a country be free to decide the way it organizes the healthcare system? Or given, for example, at the European integration there will be a stronger role of guidelines and institutions that are cross-national and try to impose or find ways to shape the local healthcare sector. What will be the role of the government? Will it be hands-on? Will it still be driving? Or will the work be driven by private payers? What will be the technology penetration? So, and when we speak about this, we speak about smartphones and the revolution that they can introduce. For example, as of today already, it's possible to measure with an iPad, it's possible to measure your life signs. So will this really be something that everybody does, or will still remain something that the top 5 or 10 percentile of the population does? And now, just to give you a deeper example on how this could vary in the future, let's take breakthrough technologies. Now, let's think about genomic. We see two possible extremes. The extremes are in 2040, genomics will allow us to predict diseases of every single individual from the moment he's born. So, and all his healthcare treatment will be decided in the moment he's born. Or rather, genomics will be sort of, will remain something like a niche, because people will not be happy to give their genome, or genomic code, to be analyzed at the moment of birth. It can be very, or maybe there will not be the technology and the skill to really predict from the moment the person is born, even more. And social solidarity, the two alternatives are, will it be a very individualistic society where everybody thinks about himself, or will there be a more stronger role of the community? I don't want to say the state, the community. So a social pressure towards being healthy and reducing the healthcare cost, because if you do your bad, you probably do the bad of somebody else that needs to pay for you, right? And some countries that we have interviewed actually said, you know what? I'm not interested in paying for people that are fat. So I want to reduce the coverage to the minimum necessary to cover, cancer, because that's something that's hardly predictable, but I don't want to pay for the consequences of obesity. So to prepare to this very wide future, what we did was we collaborated we started a process, I would like to say. So with 6 countries around the world that, as you can see, are very diverse for history, size, characteristic of the healthcare system, and social norms. We started a process. And it's a process that aims at doing 2 things: developing a vision and developing a strategy. The vision is the end goal, so what these countries see as the future of their healthcare system. And the strategy is the way to get there. Of course, being an exercise on 2040, it has to be a little bit creative, right? So we don't expect that it's going to be exactly what will happen, but we believe it's an important exercise, and the stakeholders involved believed it was an important exercise to really find a cohesive effort towards a common goal. So what these healthcare systems believe about their future. So, of course, you need to discount for a lot of country differences, but I would say that 3 common themes emerged.